Hey, this is Robert Leiterman with the Bluff Creek Project. And Tate, of course, can't leave Tate. We couldn't do any of this without Tate. He's like the man behind the scenes. He just tells me to show up at a certain time, and I do, and then I push in a special code number, and then I'm able to talk to people. So Tate, thanks, appreciate it. So him and I are working on this one. We're just trying to get the season back in. We're doing a bunch of interviews at the beginning of the year, just so we have a lot of interviews to work with. We're not going to do as many as we did before because, one only has so much time, but we're trying to do about two, would you say, Tate, about two a month-ish?
Yeah, 2 a month. It just works better for everybody. So we record a lot right now, and then we don't have to do a lot in the future.
Yeah, it's just kind of fun. As we know, we prefer the ones in the field because it's that atmosphere. It kind of brings out the little fun part in everybody's soul when we get to talk to them out in the field. But these are okay too. They're just different. Sitting in a building, looking at a screen, asking questions isn't the same as getting rained on or sitting by a nice warm fire, discussing these things. But we're looking forward to this. We have a special guest. It's Harvey. And I'll tell a little bit quick about Harvey there. Give a little background. Is being with the Bluff Creek Project, we get to meet a lot of interesting people. And like certain times a year, we promise to show up at the film site. We take people down there. We give them tours. And this was just last year. And we were all set up right at the 12 and 13, kind of the turnoff for going down to the film site for 12 and 13H. We had a couple RVs sitting there, and we were just like kicking back. That same trip, we also went over to the Willow Creek they had their Bigfoot days. So we're going to be there for a whole week, going back and forth. But we're kicking back and we're just having a good old time. It's relaxing, discussing, telling, swapping lies, the usual stuff. And this guy pulls up in this car. It's a street car. It's not one of those things you expect, the 4-wheel drive, with all the decked out stuff. It's just a regular street car. Shows up, guy gets out, introduces himself. It's Harvey. He goes, I'm Harvey. And the amazing thing is he knew all of our names and who was who. It's almost like this guy did his homework. He went over and he goes, I'm gonna look all these dudes up and I'm gonna figure out everything there is to know about them and put their faces with what they say and what they do. And he came by and we were pretty impressed because Harvey knew all of us. He goes, oh, you're that guy or you're this guy. We just kind of dropped our mouth going, wow, this guy sure knows us. So we had to decide whether he was one of those groupie types or he was just a serious guy on the subject matter. And it's number two. He was pretty serious about the subject matter and wanted to meet us, and he wanted to tour the film site. So it was kind of fun. And I got to spend some quality time with Harvey, and it was really unique because he's not like the backseat driver of the Bigfoot research team. He's done a lot of things himself, has taken an interest in it, and we had great conversations, and I'm really looking forward to this interview.
Yeah. So the day Harvey showed up, I thought we were going to die.
and tell us about that, Tate. Why was that?
I don't know, crazed fans. I mean, look what happened to John Lennon.
That's right.
Well, let's bring Harvey on. So
yeah,
so we got to do that.
Yeah. So Harvey, please discreetly tell us about yourself. Yeah, give us a little background about you, so our listeners can find a better understanding of who Harvey really is.
Sure. Well, so first of all, hi guys. It's really amazing to talk to you both again, and thank you so much for doing this. I guess you're scraping the bottom of the barrel to have civilians like me come on the podcast. So I'm probably the least qualified person you'll ever talk to. But no, it's I just love what you guys are doing. As you know, I actually am kind of, I guess, a Bluff Creek groupie. Never thought I'd say that, but it is kind of true. But a little bit about me. So I live in the Bay Area, got wife and kids, and just kind of a normal Silicon Valley type of person, I guess, and no real connection at all to the subject matter until about 2015. And kind of the short version of the story is I'm sitting on the couch with my boys who were younger back then, obviously, and we're watching the Les Stroud series just because there was nothing better to do, and it was kind of a dad-son thing on the couch. And just by coincidence, he was they were showing the episode where he went into Willow Creek area. Now, obviously not to the film site, as you guys know, but that I guess that season he decided to do this whole thing on Bigfoot, and it just was a surprise to me. So I'm just sitting there watching the episode, kind of barely paying attention to it. Excuse me. And I decided just to look it up, where he was. And, couple of Google searches later, I was like, oh, it's not that far from my house. It's, maybe 9 or 10 hours and to get back in there. And it kind of came this silly dad idea to the kids, and let's go back in there. And I actually made it back up in there the first time later that year. And since then, I've been back about, it's kind of hard for me to count, a little over 10 times, maybe as many as 15 times. And I've only been to this one area. I've not had yet the chance to kind of experience this anywhere else other than Bluff Creek. Could use some tips, by the way, of where else to go. But because, once I kind of became familiar with it, I got more interested in the area itself, because, as you know, it's such a rich, location of history and wilderness, and you could spend your whole life out there and barely make a dent in terms of traveling around it. So anyway, I've only been to the Bluff Creek area, anyway, it's just been fantastic. So eventually that also led me to the Bluff Creek Project blog site that I think is maintained by Jamie, or used to be maintained by Jamie. And that's how I got directions to get actually back down in there. So the first time I actually got physically to the film location, way down in there, was, I think, back in 2016, if memory serves correct. I did not make it back in there the first time I went. And it was scary as all heck, because, at the time I was completely unprepared. Didn't have all the gear that I carry with me today, a little bit more experienced, but it's just been an amazing journey for me. And since then, I've now taken, my entire family. I've taken, my kids' friends. I've taken actual people who've flown in from the United Kingdom down in there. So, I've by no means am I an expert of Bluff Creek, but it's really all because of you guys. And I started to follow your podcasts and whatnot. So when I rolled up onto your camping party last summer, as I was telling you, Robert, at the time when I first said hello, I'd never met anybody before, obviously, so I didn't know your faces, but I knew your voices, because, I'll have you in my ear pods as I'm going out and doing things. And so I knew Tate's voice and, so on and so forth. And so that's how I could identify everybody when I rolled in, and here we are.
That was pretty impressive. I thought maybe you worked for like this government, and you had a way to figure all this stuff out. It's pretty good.
No.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the podcast is because you're probably like most of the people who go out squatching. You see a lot of your experiences on television. You get inspired by the television, and you do your homework, and then you go out in the field and you try to apply the research techniques, or you go to areas they talk about. And some of that stuff you probably looked up. You're looking, I go, okay, I guess it's true because they posted it, they say it, but it's not always the case. Now, the things you've heard and talked about when you showed up in Bluff Creek area, was it exactly what you were expecting to see? I mean, did you expect to see like other people out, or you expected to hear like Sasquatch calls every night, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't know what to expect. I guess the first couple of times it was just this kind of, goofy dad excursion thing, really. But actually, I take that back. The thing that I first experienced when I was there initially, and then every time I've been back since, there has been a consistent piece of it, which is just how remote this area is. It was, it's a little unnerving, specifically in the early phases when I would go back in there on my own, which I've done a number of times. It's amazing just how, one little twist of the ankle or the knee, or a flat tire in the car, or whatnot, which I've had, it could very easily turn into a kind of a quasi-survival scenario. So definitely need to be prepared. But yes, you're right. I'm a total civilian, if you will. I'm not a researcher or anything. I'm kind of just a part-time enthusiast on the topic. And so I've never had any type of direct encounter or experience back there. Maybe we can get into that a little later. I have had some, what I think, exposure to the phenomenon, I think. It's a little debatable, but it's just a ton of fun for me. I've really kind of since gone down the rabbit hole and, done a tremendous amount of research on my own about, this entire, genre of study that dates back potentially hundreds and hundreds of years, of course.
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of this amazing journey, and I'm reading. If I could put a little plug in, Robert, for your book. So you have this great book that you just recently released about the rediscovery of the Bluff Creek Project, the film site itself, and thanks to Tate and all the other guys who helped bring that back really to the attention of the world. And it's a great read, and it just really points to all the effort that you guys have put into documenting almost on a quasi-scientific level, this entire area, and really trying to prove the location, mapping it back to the film that was taken in 1967. So,
yeah, I appreciate the heads up on that and the kudos. That was a lot of work that went in there. It's funny that like the book was written about 10 years after we did our exploratory project of trying to find it, and all the stuff we learned in the process of writing the book it was a whole bunch. It's like when I first started, 2010. Yeah, 100 years before, 1910. Yeah, no, about 2010 to do this project, and so I went into Stephen Stroifer's bookstore. Have you been to Stephen Stroifer's bookstore?
I have tried to get in there multiple times, but unfortunately, every time I go there, he's never been there. So at the moment, I still have not been, and I think he sold it recently, right? So I have not been into the bookstore.
Well, he's still working on trying to get all those books he had in their new homes. So he's still working on that project. Last I talked with him, and I heard he was doing that. But yeah, trying to catch Stephen there was a difficult challenge. We've all been through it.
Trying to catch Stephen at the bookstore is trying to find Bigfoot.
Yeah. But you have driven by the bookstore, correct?
Yes, many times.
Oh, good. Well, then that counts too, by the way. So when I first got there, I went to talk to Stephen about the whole thing. I didn't know all that much or cared to know all that much about the process of the Patterson film. It was just a project to try to find something that was missing, or people were misplacing it. And when Stephen started spewing his lecture off his outline on the computer, I was amazed how much information that I did not know about the whole phenomena associated with the film site. And so I got pretty educated on that. And then it's been going on since. You learn all these new things. But yeah, that's how I got started with it. It's like, I'm your cultural natural history guy, right? I can tell you about the cultural history, the natural history, how to track, how to get in the woods not lost. But then you are asking me questions about, what about this phenomena that took place at this place at this time? I knew it did. I knew a little bit about it, but I couldn't sit there and tell you a whole bunch. But now I can. So we'll start somewhere with it. When you find something that interests us, we keep running through it until we figure it out. And then we all become experts, right? And once you're an expert, you don't want to listen to anybody else because you know everything. So hopefully we'll never become experts at anything. So we'll keep learning about it and just sharing our knowledge. But I got a question for you. You mentioned earlier about 2016. Was that like your first time when you said, I'm going to go Bigfoot research?
Yes.
I'm going to solo it.
It was. Yes, it was. And so it's kind of a funny story. So, the whole thing was about taking my kids out there and doing the dad trip. Well, they were busy with summer sports or what have you at the time. And I just kind of got impatient one day and I said, heck with it. So I just went up completely on my own. And boy, what a mistake that was. But it was kind of an amazing journey. So what I ended up doing coming from the Bay Area, it's kind of a long way to get out there. Definitely doable in a day, but it's a long trip. So I decided to kind of break it up into pieces. So I first went to Eureka and overnighted in Eureka first as kind of the first waypoint. And then the next day I went out to try to go out to the site. And of course I'm in Eureka, that night by myself and never been to Eureka before. And it was a whole nother exposure that I wasn't really expecting. But I'm sitting there at a nice little restaurant out in town and having a pizza or whatnot and talking to the server guy. And, naive me, I said, hey, I'm here to go find Bigfoot. And it's kind of blurted out after a few beers. And the guy ends up showing me this picture of that was supposedly sent to him by one of his buddies who was out in the Six Rivers National Forest during that time, because there was a big fire going on at the time. And as you guys know, there's usually fires every year out there, which again, had no idea going into it initially. So, and there it is in the in the midst of this little picture of this little kind of thing, and covered by smoke. And he texted it to me, and I was all interested in it. And anyway, that was kind of it. Went on the next day. Well, it turns out, get home and I start kind of staring at it more closely. It was a total hoax picture. And, of course, it was represented to me as, this real thing. But there you go. My very first experience in the world of Bigfoot, I got punked. So welcome to the subject, right? But anyway, so what happened was I had this little kind of fancy sports car at the time, and I decided to drive that out there. I don't know what I was thinking. And thank goodness the fires. So I actually got back into Orleans, but I never really got off of 96 because the fires were so bad. There was such a large incident command center there by the fire crews and whatnot. I just basically turned around and came back, and I'm glad that was the case in retrospect, because now that I know where to go, I would have never have gotten really back in anywhere off of a paved road with the car I had. I didn't have the right gear, I didn't have the right car, and so on. But that was my very, very first experience. So yeah, there you go.
That's a wild one.
But obviously,
by the way,
that didn't deter you. You came back.
No, yeah. Well, actually, so there was a postscript to the story. So I think it was a year or two ago when I had friends come over who I knew from the United Kingdom, from England, who flew in to, now I'm kind of within my little teeny circle of people in Silicon Valley. I'm kind of like the Bigfoot go-to guy. By the way, it's a very, very small circle. So we kind of replicated a piece of that same route. So we actually did an overnight in Eureka before the next day we went out to the site. And son of a gun, I went to that same restaurant, and there was the guy. This is about almost, 7-8 years later. And I've been to that restaurant many times since. I've never seen him, but there he was. And I recognized him right away. And he was serving me again, and he didn't remember me. And I kind of, I actually had the photograph on my phone still. And, we kind of laughed about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, my friend said it was legit and whatnot." And I looked at him and said, "Come on." But, yeah, nice guy. But there you go. I actually met him again afterwards. Kind of a total irony.
That's hilarious. Sometimes you might get a fake photo. I don't know. Maybe that guy really did think it was real, or maybe he just thought it was fake and then wanted to punk you, like you said. But you never know. Yeah, Bigfooting, the world of Bigfoot is weird.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time at bars, you're going to have people who have photographs to show you, by the way.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good thing you didn't run into a Bobo there or something.
Yep. I haven't met him yet. That's on the list.
Oh, well, he's been pretty busy, but he's a great guy to meet. It's funny because you brought up Bobo, but I've known Bobo for a while. That's back in 1999. I got involved with the BFRO, and about 1999, I get this phone call from this guy who called me up out of the blue, and he said, because my nickname was Bigfoot Ranger, and so he gets this call out of the blue, and he's, "Hey, I'm Boba Fett. I heard about you, like the Bigfoot Ranger," and so I got a chance to meet him and start setting up. So that was the first time I met him, and I didn't know whether to take him serious or not because he's talking like a surfer dude. He's talking about Bigfoot. Right. But yeah, he's a great guy, and being able to spend time with him is pretty awesome. We've had some things happen together, and which is pretty incredible. And Bobo's also a pretty nice guy. When I work at, there's this one guy that lives nearby, and the park I work at, and he still stays with his mom, but he's really into the paranormal stuff. He's really into the Bigfoot cryptozoological things, and I swing by, I chat with them. You don't have the guys you go to. You have your favorite people to talk to. You sit there and you talk about certain subject matters. Well, this guy's favorite subject matter was about Bigfoot. So I chat with him about Bigfoot, and I've been doing it several times. So I got to a point where I'd be telling them stuff, and like, "Oh, I know Bigfoot. I know Bobo." They're like, "Yeah, sure you do." It's funny because you tell people you know people, and they kind of go, "Sure you do." Yeah. I know Bobo too. I see him on the show.
Yeah, I know your mom.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. So I scheduled a meeting with this guy. I went ahead and said, "Well, I tell you what, I didn't tell him, but I talked to Bobo about it, and Bobo was very gracious to spend his time meeting this guy." And so I set it all up in advance, and I talked to the guy's mom and said, "Hey, at this date, at this time, make sure he's home because I'm bringing a person he wants to meet, but he doesn't know I'm going to do this." So she goes, "Okay." So the date comes around. I take Bobo with me, pick him up to visitor center. We drive down to the trailer park. I knock on I stand by the side of the door and I have Bobo knock on the door. So Bobo knocks on the door. I'm kind of hiding behind the door frame. And the mom answers the door. And she opens the door and she goes, hello. And he goes, oh, I'm Bobo. I'm here to meet this guy, right? She looks at him and she goes, well, he's sleeping right now. And it's like, oh. So I popped out from behind the door. It says, hey, mom, it's me. I go, could you wake him up? I go, you remember the date and the time and the place? This is it. So could you wake him up? She goes, oh, okay. So she invites us in and we're sitting in the living room and we're standing there very quietly looking around because it had a lot of artifacts and stuff. And so she disappears in the back room and she comes back out and she goes, oh, it'll be a little bit. He'll be here. So we're waiting for him to show up. And then we're waiting for him to show up. And finally he comes out. You can tell when the people are half asleep, they're like, whoa. So he was tired. He walks up, he looks at me, looks at Bobo, looks at me, looks at Bobo, looks at me, look back at Bobo, and he goes, no way, no way, no way. So it was true. I do know Bobo. And Bobo came to his house. And we chatted. It was kind of cool. But you see, we never took pictures. So we can't prove anybody that he met Bobo in his house. We never took any pictures.
Well, yeah, I don't have any pictures of this, but Matt Moneymaker stayed at my house.
That's amazing. That's amazing. In Florida, Tate, or in
this is
else?
California, Southern California. That was a trip. He came up to Ventura because we were looking at some areas, him and I were driving around in my car and he missed his train back home. And so like, you can stay here. Our house, we have an extra bedroom. So he stayed here and I took him to the train station early in the morning. I was like, so that's pretty funny.
Well, but it's interesting. But it actually is interesting because it kind of speaks to the community that I think you guys have developed over time, right? I mean, there's a crew of you that are associated, I think, like with Bluff Creek, and then there's kind of like an outer circle and an outer circle, and so on. And I mean, it's a really nice group of people who kind of, from what I can kind of tell, kind of have the same vibe, obviously have similar interests and whatnot, but you guys all help each other out, and it's just it's really, really nice to see. And the more of these things that I've looked into and listened to and researched over the years, I can really tell that there's kind of a commonality there. So it's really nice to be able to touch that world from time to time.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the reason we get along so well, is because we have the same interests. Otherwise, we probably hate each other outside of Bigfoot. Who knows?
Yeah, one of the things we got to remember though is you can't take politics and bring them down with you on Bigfoot outings because it drives wedges between the personalities. So that's one thing we try not to do. Is like we get together, we do our thing, and we're just sitting around the campfire, relaxing. Some people bring up political stuff, and it's best not because
that's when everybody scatters away.
Yeah, we're not all on the same page politically, but in terms of our subject matter, we all complement each other and we all have special expertise. Like you take the Bluff Creek Project and you have different people that have different skill sets. So it's nice to be able to fall back on them and be able to exchange information or have people deal with certain people like Tate here. He is good with this aspect of it, the podcasting and the filming and other things that we do. So having him around to be able to help us with that is very important. And me, I'm trying to think of what my expertise is. I think the only thing I'm good at is sitting around telling stories.
No, you're good at reminding people like, oh, you can't do that because of this. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm like a naysayer when it comes to like there's a fire closure, right? Which means there's a reason for it, right? Which means you shut down fires. And then I got to remind people, there's a fire closure. You can't have fires. Did you get your fire permit for the fire that you want to have? Or do you really think you should be smoking on this trail when the fire danger is high? Or how many beers have you had today? Are you sure you're drinking too much? That's where I draw the line. You can't tell me to not drink more beers or stuff. Did
I say Tate in particular? No, I did not.
I know you were thinking that in your mind.
Yeah. Tate, does your mom and dad know you're having this many beers today?
Stop it, Robert.
Yeah.
Well, but I
got another question.
Yeah. Well, so let me just add this though. So one of the things I was super impressed with about you guys when I met you all last summer, though, is that, how professional you guys were. And, so there was so for the listeners who maybe haven't been to this particular area, there's the spot where we all kind of met each other. You guys call it the cell site. It's right where 12 and 13 intersects with 12 and 13H. And you go a little further down 12 and 13 and you'll come to this area called Blair. What was it called? The Meadow? What's it called again?
So you go past the cell site from 12 and 13H, which goes down to the film site. Keep going a little past on the 12 and 13 road. You'll go over Bluff Creek Bridge, the Notice Creek Bridge.
Right.
And then beyond that is Last Camp. Then if you keep going up the road to the right, you'll go to Laird Meadow.
Laird Meadow, that's what it was. So you guys allowed me to tag along that night, and there was probably 10 of you or whatnot. We kind of got out there, just when the sun was setting, and I was just super impressed with how you guys were so kind of methodical and thoughtful about, making a plan for that evening. And different groups of two and who was going to cover which area. You guys all had communication gear with you. Somebody had I think it was a very expensive drone with, thermal technology on it, and people had handheld thermal units. And I you guys I really got to hand it to you, though. I mean, it was a very professional scenario, and I was just kind of stood on the periphery and just watched and observed. But it was pretty cool. So, again, for those who may be listening to this, who haven't met you guys are, you have fun and you kind of take it easy and a little loose, but you also are very professional at what you do, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, thank you for that, Harvey. And I think I've told you this before, and Robert. I was like, in this field, you can't take yourself too seriously, because if you take yourself too seriously all the time, you're going to get burnt out so fast. So it's important to have fun while you're doing what you're doing. But when it comes down to it, I do take this seriously. Robert can attest to that. And I think that's the reason everybody in our circle gets along so well. It's because we have fun. We like to have fun, but when it comes down to it, we take it seriously. And so I think it's important to have that mentality, to have fun, but still take it serious.
Yeah, I mean, my gosh, you guys, if I remember correctly, Tate, you had driven all the way from Florida. There was someone who drove from New England area. Someone drove from like Montana. I mean, it was just, oh my goodness. I was so surprised about just the amount of effort so many people put into getting back in there and meeting up that time. Then of course there was Kip and his, very nice, lovely wife, who I was stunned. He drove that giant trailer back in there. I couldn't believe it. They got that thing back in there all the way. But it was just amazing to see all you guys there. And by the way, I've loved seeing some of the video that's come out of that trip, and kind of really brings a smile to my face. So
there's a lot of video.
Tate, remind us again the Sabe version you had just recently put up, or
it was it's Sasquatch's Search for Sabe is the series. But it was a Bluff Creek episode, and kind of we were up there filming for that. So I've been doing all these videos now, like you were saying earlier, Robert, and so I wanted to do this series, and we went up to Bluff Creek, and this time was really cool because like Ian came along for it, and so we had Ian up there and pretty much the whole gang. So that was really cool.
Yeah, just to interrupt for a second, Ian is the guy. It's one of the four of us who were researching. I'm sorry, one of the three of us originally, but then we came forward when we picked up Rowdy of searching the film site. Yeah, Ian was the devil's advocate part of the group. And
we interviewed him a while. Yeah, we interviewed him a while back on here, but it was cool to have Ian with us, and we did something I've been wanting to do for a while, because we went up there and we would go to these spots every night and do our thing but leave. And so I was like, let's just camp at every spot after we do our thing and see what happens. And so that was pretty cool. Then I think like later into the trip, Harvey came out here and we ran into him. He's sitting around the fire or little ring that Kip had, and he's sipping on some wine, and we're like, I think our initial thought was like, who's this dude?
Yep, that was me. But I did bring good wine. Not all of you had it, but I think Kip and Mrs. Kip took it. So there you go. I was trying to buy my way into the inner circle.
No,
and it worked, obviously.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah,
he was a cool dude, and it was cool to have you tag along because it's like, I don't know. That's what I wanted to ask you is like, you said you're more of a civilian. This is the term you use in the community right now when you were up there with us. So, like, were you, okay, I don't want to use the word awestruck, but I have to. Were you awestruck when you came up here and saw everybody that you've been hearing forever?
Oh my gosh, totally. Dude, I felt like I was Robert used the word groupie. I was a total groupie. I when I came, I had this, I don't know, I had this biggest smile on my face the entire time. And like a kid in a candy store or, a groupie at a Beatles concert, with a backstage pass or whatever analogy you want to use. It was just so fun for me. And it was great. And I think one of the benefits I may have had personally is because, I'd been looking into the topic for so long. Although, I have just a fraction of the experience that you guys do, but at least I felt I didn't need to run around and ask everybody just like the 101 basic types of questions. I was able just to hang out and just to listen to you guys talk to each other. And, what was interesting is you guys really didn't talk about, the subject almost at all. It was just more interpersonal stuff and
right.
Getting caught up and whatnot. And I mean, that was just great. It was just great. I mean, you can tell that you don't really need to go through that level of basic detail any longer, right? It's
No.
much more advanced than that nowadays. But man, it was killer. It was so fun for me.
Yeah, because like it's so true. Like we're sitting around camp. We're not even talking Bigfoot, like you said, most of the time. It's like we're telling jokes or singing songs because somebody's playing guitar, or we're talking about food, or we're talking about just stupid stuff people have done. I'm not saying any names. But
no, Robert's right. So, I stole my wife's Subaru and packed it with all my stuff, and I rolled up, and it was still light outside, and I rolled up on you guys, and my window goes down, and you're all looking at me like, who the heck is this idiot? And I stick my big face out the window, and I said, hey, is this the Bluff Creek Project? And I'll never forget it. Robert, it was the brave soul that kind of leaves the circle and approaches me in my car and, starts kind of chatting me up. Of course, he's analyzing, who is this person? But and here we are.
That's so funny. Yeah, Robert's kind of the guy who will go check on everything first.
Yeah, someone's got to do it. Yeah, but you weren't the only person that drove up. We had like 5 separate groups going up, and we had people who went down to the film site. We didn't know who they were, and they didn't need any assistance. They knew exactly where they were going. They went down there, and we do get a little concerned when people feel too comfortable and confident of where things are.
Right.
And we're like, okay, what are they going to do down there? You get really possessive of certain locations, and we kind of get that way at the film site. Tate, would you concur with that?
I would overly concur with that.
Yeah, because it's the resources. It's public land. Everybody can go there if they want, but we just wish people were a little more respectful of things. And when they go to another place, they treat it with respect and dignity. And take it for what it is. It's a historical place, and it's a spiritual place, and it means a lot to us. It has for quite a while. I was going there before 2010. I was going down there and looking for it. Of course, I didn't know where it was, or did I care? It's down there somewhere. But I was down there collecting bear tracks in the sand, or looking for drift pieces, or looking for things down there. That's what I did. It was kind of fun. I used to ride my bicycle, not my motorcycle, but my bicycle from Laos camp. And I would ride up the hill to the junction of 12 and 13H, and then ride down the hill. And back then, there was no berm there, so you could take your bike all the way down to the bottom where the MK Davis site location was. I'm sorry, the Peter Byrne location site, right there with now the picnic table is. And from there, you ditch your bike and you walk down to the river, and you're there. Because you're at Peter Byrne location, and you're like, we're good, we've seen it. And we didn't know how to compare it with the reality of that it's not it, based on this location and the terrain and the width and all those other things. But we got down to the river. I saw a Humboldt Martin down there one time. It was pretty cool. And And I think 3 times I've ridden my bike all the way from Louse Camp all the way down there and back. But it does kick your butt coming out of there. But you get the coast pretty much all the way back down towards the 12 and 13H bridge, go uphill a little bit, and then you're down to Louse Camp. But yeah, you get to meet all sorts of interesting people. And you're just one of a party of 5 that had passed through. But you're also one of a party of 4 that I walked down to the film site. And I'd love to hear what your impression was when you eventually got down to the film site.
Yeah, well, I think the first time I actually got actually there was in again back in 2016 or so. In fact, I don't know if you guys remember. Again, for the listeners who haven't been there, you guys have this little container where like a little log book that's hanging off of a tree, and well, with a pencil or a pen in there. And so if you actually make it all the way there, you could actually sign your name, and it's amazing just all the people that have signed that thing over the years who've come there from all over the world, right? By the way, when I was there not that long ago, it is filled up. So maybe this summer we could add some new paper to the.
Let's just change
another book.
Yeah, let's just change the book out. Yeah.
To the container, but I don't know how often you guys look at that thing. But I think maybe the second time I was there with my kids and some of my kids' friends, they actually drew like a little cartoon in the logbook, and that comes from us. But I guess to your question, Robert, like what did I think? So Tate has the background of Jurassic Park right now in the Zoom call, and it's a lot like Jurassic Park. It's a lot like the movie Predator. I mean, it is crazy just how dense that it's almost like a jungle, really, because there's ferns out there and whatnot, right? Just how dense it is, and you're kind of bushwhacking your way back in there, and so it's not that hard to get lost per se, because you can kind of only really go in one direction. So as long as you retrace your steps, you're for the most part okay if you're by yourself. But it's extremely remote, and that's I guess one of the things that I've thought about over time is if this whole filming back in 1967 was a total hoax, which many people still believe it was a hoax, right? I don't, but many people do. Pretty much everybody I deign to bring the topic up with in Silicon Valley do. I just thought to myself, why go to all this trouble to come all the way down from Yakima, Washington, dragging a horse trailer, spending money that these guys really didn't have very much of, and, come all the way down here to film this thing. You could have done it in your backyard, quite frankly, and nobody would have known the difference. And so it just kind of, for me, it's one of the small pieces of data, if you will, that kind of adds to a degree, the credibility, in my opinion, of the filming of this thing back in 1967. So just crazy, crazy remote.
I love how remote it is in there. It's a beautiful spot. I think my first time I was like, this looks different. Because obviously, like you said, it's a jungle. It's overgrown.
Totally. Yeah.
And, but being there, did it feel surreal, like to you, like, oh my God, this is the place, this is where it happened some 50 years ago? Like standing on that substrate where Patty walked and where Roger and Bob were, it's almost like if these trees could talk, what would it be saying? Like, was that surreal for you?
I think maybe a better way for me to put it is just how important the location is in I'd say, quite frankly, world culture. And one of the things that I've learned kind of going back and researching that site in particular is just when this, when they made the film and they started to show it around certain theaters, certainly mostly in the United States, but just over time, how that's compounded. Then there was the famous Leonard Nimoy In Search Of episode, and here we are today. And, you see the image of frame 352, I believe, right, of the thing looking back and half stride and whatnot. Just, you could show that picture to almost anybody around the world, and for the most part, they'll say, "Oh, that's Bigfoot," right? And so I just think it points to just how culturally important this location is. I remember there was a Japan film crew in there one time. There was I think you guys tell the story, there was a National Geographic helicopter crew that back at one point in time. Yep. There, people from all over the world who, try to get back in there. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for you guys in the Bluff Creek Project, people wouldn't know where to go. and me included, right? I mean, it really took me stumbling around in Google to find the blog spot, to find the directions that Jamie had written or whoever, and then for me to have the guts, quite frankly, to give it a try. But you guys have really, I think, uncovered and documented a very, very important part of modern history.
I think so. Yeah, we were the exploiters. Yep, that was us.
The exploiters. I think this will be a cool time to plug this, because this episode won't, by the time this is out, it's going to be pretty far down the road. So, and then everybody in this Zoom call is going to be a part of it too. So that's cool. But, exploring Bluff Creek, I think, is what needs to be. We need to be the group that does it, because we're not really the Bluff Creek Project until we explore all of Bluff Creek. And so this summer we're doing a hike from the Klamath River up Bluff Creek itself to the Fiji site. And so Harvey here is going to be a part of that, and Robert here is a part of that, and I'm a part of that. So if you guys want to talk about that for a minute, and let me ask Harvey, what do you think of that idea? First off, I want to get your perspective from it.
I think it's killer, right? And again, it's to a degree, it's kind of how you guys have been innovative with this whole topic. And on the other hand, I'm actually kind of super surprised nobody else has thought of doing it up until Tate. I think it was your idea, right? So it's just it's super gutsy for you guys to want to take this thing on. And again, I referenced the movie Predator a few minutes ago. To me, that's exactly what I think it's going to be like. A group of guys, self-sustained for the most part, over 5 to 10 days, however long it takes, humping it through extremely rugged terrain, taking a route of travel that I don't think really anybody has known to take in, maybe ever. And so certainly in the past couple of decades, right? So I think it's fantastic. And I hope, first of all, nobody gets hurt, of course, that everybody makes it back in one piece. But I really hope you guys have, some, the ability to document this journey, because I think it's going to be super interesting.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be documenting for sure. And it's funny, unbeknownst to me, coming up with the idea, Robert's like, oh, yeah, we talked about that, but we never did it. And I was like, dudes, this is okay. We have to do it this year now, because we're talking about it. And if we don't do it now, we probably won't do it next year, because we're putting it off, or we won't do it the year after that. And people are going to get older. People are going to not care anymore about it. And so it's like, now is the time. And we had a Zoom call not too long ago with everybody involved, and now it's like, okay, it's getting real, because we're planning this. We're mapping things out. We're getting like groups ready far in advance, so when it comes time for this to actually happen, it should run smoothly with no hitches. So that's probably the exciting thing for me about this.
Yeah, knock on wood for that one. Yeah, it's a lot of us have gone up and down sections of that place numerous times. So this has been a wonderful winter. Lots of precipitation, some snow in areas that normally don't get it, which means a lot of melt off is going to be, a lot of runoff, which is going to be a lot of debris is going to be placed along the Powell path we're going to be covering. So that's one more challenge to try to deal with. Is some sections are prone for sliding. That means a lot of extra debris in the way, and there's going to be more volume of water running this year than normal. And we're still going at a time period where it's kind of towards the earlier part of the slow season. So, yeah, and everybody involved is pretty excited about it. And we're trying to not talk too much about it with the public outside the circle. Is we want to get this done. It's almost like jinxing yourself to talk about something before you do it. And then you get yourselves all talked up about it, and then you get there, you're like, holy crap, we're never going to survive this. It's not, let's just do something else. Then you become like a reality Bigfoot show where you pretend like you're doing all these things, but you're really on the shoulder of the road filming in a section, and then you're running a quadcopter across the areas there to get all those other things done. And you're like, oh yeah, that was a great journey. But the Bluff Creek Project has never done anything easy. and we've always wanted to do the right thing. And we've talked about this very project in the past, but it's a matter of time, finances. The more people you have involved, the greater the chance of your success. The less people you have involved, the easier it is to quit and decide not to do it. But the more people you have, the more complicated it gets because everybody has a job to do. You have to put them someplace. So you have to go, okay. So signing up in advance, figure out who you're going to work with so you can pick a friend, the people you're going to go die with. You got to pick your guys who are going to carry you back out when things get bad. And you pick the guys who don't eat a lot so they won't eat all your food, and little things like that. So I'm looking forward to it too. And I've been thinking about other things too, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, let's do equipment check. And the scuttlebutt when people are talking back and forth from the project about this is they're all looking at equipment they might need or communication stuff they're going to need. So some thought has gone into this and people are constantly thinking about how to make it a successful expedition. And Tate is the guy who said, well, let's do it. And he picked the block of time. So he's like the motivation behind this. And I'm the naysayer guy going, hey, did you think about this? You think about that? What about this? Yeah, I'm just like playing dad for the group, I guess, one of the dads. But I think it's a good group of people.
It's a father-son role kind of a thing in this. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, Robert, we got to do it. We have to do this. And then
and Tate's.
But it's cool that
I was just going to say Tate's absolute.
So go ahead, Robert.
Okay, I was going to say Tate is absolutely right about the more we're around, the more we find things to do, the harder it is for us to set aside this time to go do this project. So Tate's the young guy. He's the motivated young guy who's saying, well, let's make time now and not postpone this like you guys have for the last 10 years. So it's good. So it's going to be a good project. And I know Tate's so excited about it. And I'm always trying to pull him back. Like I got to grab the reins and go, whoa. Yeah, but that's okay. We all have our different parts to do. And
more strength.
Harvey's also part of this project too. I just throw another one on, I guess. And Harvey's part of this project too. So Harvey's going to be involved. Harvey's involved with the organization factors too. And he's another level head to look at, hey, what did you guys think about this? Did you guys think about that? So it's good having people like Harvey involved that are helping us preset this thing up, help us make sure we're all lined up for it.
Yeah, because everybody plays a role. I think Harvey, you've brought. It's good because you're thinking of things that we might have not thought about, and so you're like, "Hey, did you think of this or that?" And everybody's going to have an important role, and I think it's going to be cool to have you on the team for this for sure.
Yeah. So we like the guy that drove up to the film site in the convertible to help us with our decision-making process.
And the glass of wine and the cup holder.
That's right. I volunteered to have the hamburgers and beers ready for you guys at the end of each waypoint along the journey. So I'm really good at stuff like that.
Like I said before, we all have our specialties and how we do things, which is kind of nice because I hate to say it takes a village, but it takes many people to have a successful program. Like the Bluff Creek Project, we started out with a film site, trying to relocate the film site. Once we did that, we started looking into how big is Patty really? Started looking at the camera size lenses, which we're still working on. Then we look at the project for cameras that we have distributed throughout the area. We're looking for wildlife. Where someday maybe we'll capture a Sasquatch on it or a Bigfoot on it, but we're not going out of the way like the Olympic Project does a very nice job of hiding all their equipment and working on their things. We haven't gone that far as to hiding some because of the snow and everything else, but it's still, we get great wildlife shots. They get great wildlife shots. And it's like the Olympic Project and the Bluff Creek Project. We all know each other. We can actually call ourselves friends. Well, some of us can, but most of us call each other friends. And I've been meeting those guys this time last year in March. I went with Bart Coutinho, and we went over towards Washington, and we spent some time with the guys out there. That was awesome. And we camped out a few days, and it wasn't raining on us. It was like those winter time when it's not raining and you don't get all that wet, which did rain a little bit. And that was awesome. And I enjoyed that. And I got to meet new friends there. The guys I hang out with the Olympic Project group. I got to meet those guys, and we invite them to our projects. They invite us to their projects. So it's kind of cool with that. I like to change gears here a little bit and kind of just throw this out here. But Harvey, what is your favorite Bigfoot show?
Of course, it's your podcast, right? So I do listen to just a few.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, but there's so many of them now. I mean, I have to be a little selective just from a time management standpoint. So I'd say my go-to every week is probably the Cliff and Bobo show, as I like to call it, the Bigfoot and Beyond podcast. I really appreciate the different types of guests, some of the scientists they have on there and whatnot, and the talk about their experiences. So I'd say that's probably the only one I kind of listen to now on a regular basis, in addition to checking out your podcast that you guys put out here for the Bluff Creek Project. From time to time, I'll also go back and take a look at listen to some of the older episodes of the Sasquatch Chronicles, which is kind of one of the gold standards, of course, in this area. And other than that, that's really about it.
I think you don't take that much time to watch the television shows for that kind of thing.
No, not at all. No, none whatsoever. Actually, no.
So that answers the question whether you've actually watched Expedition Bigfoot then.
I have not. No, in fact, I've never seen an episode of really any of this. The only one I've really ever seen is that one Stroud episode of Willow Creek back in. I mean, that's really the only one I've ever seen. So,
yeah, we were a little disappointed that when Stroud went up, he didn't look us up to show him where the film set was. He also came during a time period when the access was closed.
Right, the gate was closed.
You got to, yeah.
Go ahead, Harvey.
No, it's all good. So I was actually I have questions for you guys, right? So one of them was on the Lestrade episode. Well, other than he was in a time of the year when he would have had to walk, 10 miles out and back or whatnot, why did he not actually get to the site itself? Do you guys know what the backstory is with that?
Well, okay. So
I think this might.
Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, okay. So this is just my opinion on it, but I think because of the way they film their shows or they do things, they don't always consult what's the best time to go. So this just happened to be a window when the weather wasn't very good and there wasn't that much access, but they try to make it work anyway. So they get to talk about some of the holistic ways of looking at it. They had a gentleman from the Hoopa area. They guided them in to certain locations, but they did get to experience an aspect of it, kind of a native aspect of Squatch, if you want to call it that way, but mostly Bigfoot's the name they use down this part of the world. So that was good. But getting to the film site, they could not. And I think in the show, if I remember, they were saying it was, but it wasn't because they couldn't get access to it. But it's still a creek. It still has the environment you would expect.
Right.
And there's still a way to look at things with it, but it wasn't the actual location. And we heard about it. We were like, oh, maybe he'll, it'd be great if they asked us, we could show him where it was. It'd be great to meet the guy because I followed him a lot on his shows where basically he goes out and he injures himself every episode. And he walks around 3 times the distance he has to walk because he's moving cameras everywhere. I like the way he looks at things. I like the way he's a musician. And he produces a lot of his stuff. He writes. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to actually meet him, but we didn't get the opportunity to do so. But I liked what he produces. I mean, I enjoy that pretty much.
That actually brings up, Tate, that brings up one of the stories I wanted to share with you guys. So go back to last summer when I met you all. I followed you down one day to the Bigfoot Days, festival down in Willow Creek, and I was kind of hanging out by the little booth that you guys set up, right, for the Bluff Creek Project, and just hanging out, just watching what was going on. And I don't know if you remember, Robert, but at one point there was a gentleman and his wife who came and was speaking to you, who was kind of well dressed and well spoken. I just kind of noticed him, and I was just listening to the conversation. It turned out he was is a member of the tribe. What is it? The Hoopa Tribal Council.
Yes.
And I kind of pulled him aside afterwards when he was about to leave and chatted him up a little bit. And I was super surprised to learn that he really had no knowledge or experience whatsoever of the whole Patterson-Gimlin film site, or even, if you will, the Sasquatch or Bigfoot at all. At least that was my impression. So I just thought that was interesting. He was probably in his mid to late 40s.
Yes.
Maybe he's a recent addition to the council there. I'm not sure. So maybe he doesn't have a lot of the history there. But it was just interesting for me to note that, not everybody there is really kind of in tune with what's going down in that area.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Like, no, we always assume that a person's of Native ancestry, they know everything there's to know about their culture, everything there's to know about the mysteriousness associated with that. But a lot of the cultures in Northwest California were almost lost because of the Europeans coming in, causing problems. Their areas, a lot of them were almost wiped out, and their culture was pretty much, in effect, almost wiped out as well because of mainstreaming and trying to force them into Christianity, and some of their concepts were, kind of pushed away. But they were able to salvage a lot of that information and bring it back, and they're in the process of bringing it back. And some of the stories are kind of, they kind of lost, and some stories are still around. So there's a process where you have some people who believe in the old ways, and you have some people who aren't that concerned about it. And so it's just a matter of people relearning about those kind of things. And Bigfoot, it's kind of a joke for a lot of people, whether you're Western or whether you're a Native American. And everybody has their way of looking at it. But yeah, there are some people who take it seriously, who are very interested in it. There's others who have heard about it, but they haven't taken a great interest in it. And the fact that he's a member of the council, it'd be nice to talk about it, bring it back in again. But it's something of the old. And does something of the old benefit something of the new? You have to decide whether it's going to be worth the while to spend time at it. But yeah, I met him and his wife, and I was chatting with him, and then Jamie kind of took over the conversation. And I'm glad you talked to him afterwards, because he did have an interest in it, and he was asking us questions. Part of me was thinking, he wanted to know if we were going into the Hoopa territory to be doing some of our research. That's kind of the part I thought he was interested in, because you just don't show up on somebody else's land and start doing those kind of things. So I thought he was curious and concerned if that's what we were doing. But I'm glad he was interested in finding out more about what was going on. And so I appreciate you talking to him. As a matter of fact, one of the things I was going to bring up was the Bigfoot days, and what you were talking about was in July, they have Bigfoot days in Willow Creek, and you were up for the Bigfoot days, and you dropped in, and we had a booth set up there, and we had some casts out, we had some books, and we were talking to people about the subject matter. And that's where that gentleman had come up with his wife, and we were talking to him, and you came up too, and you sat there for a little bit, and you got to get your ears full of the same old spiel we have to give to people every time they ask us a question. It's like we get the same question asked numerous times, and after a while, we don't answer them at 100% anymore. We start out answering 100%. By the time you show up, we're like at 45%, 35%, all burned out, tired, and thirsty. But yeah, but you have to admit, it was kind of cool to sit there and watch the people come up and ask those questions.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I think it just points to kind of the public service, if you will, that you guys perform, whether you're doing it knowledgeably or intentionally or not. I mean, it really is an amazing thing that you guys are doing. And I'm just glad that it's starting to get a little bit more exposure. But one of the other questions I had for you guys, and because I get asked this from time to time by people I talk to about it, is like, well, okay, well, hold on. So, there's this group of guys, and they have trail cams down in there. They've had them for a number of years. They've made a rediscovery of a previously thought extinct, species, the humboldt marten, right? But have they ever, caught a Bigfoot on the trail cams? And if not, does that mean that there really is no such thing down there? So I'm sure, Robert, you get that question a lot. I mean, how would you address that?
Yeah, well, we do get it a lot, and I can't argue with their findings, why it happens that way. Well, there's a lot of theories that go into why things aren't caught on camera, right down to the point of it. Is it an electrical pulse in the camera that the batteries run off that puts out a frequency? Or is it the night shot that that they can see the infrared beam. And I don't have an exact answer for you. I do know that we have cameras out there, and we haven't officially caught a Bigfoot creature on it. Our cameras aren't hidden like some cameras are. When I was setting up cameras for our law enforcement work at the parks, we would hide those guys pretty well, and we would catch our bad guys. But if we left them out in the open, they would see them, and then they get stolen, and et cetera, et cetera. But when you have cameras set up that for about 8 months a year, you can't go see them because the roads are closed. It's too hard to get into it because of the Port Orford cedar. There's I guess, for lack of better words, of a virus that attacks certain types of trees, and it spreads by water. So if we go in on the off season, we can transfer it and cause other trees to be infected by it. But you have this area that's closed, and so you set your cameras up, and you can't go in there and pull the snow off of them or put the vegetation pulled away from your viewing window a lot. So we just have that deal with that. And there's also science to setting them up. Like people traditionally set them out looking at whatever's going to come. We've come to the point of turning them around and putting them so they're shooting in towards your subject, like in your camp or something, where they won't be accidentally triggered. Where they will be accidentally triggered, but you can't really see them until you trigger them. And I don't have an answer for you, but the debate goes on and on. Some cameras that are hidden, you don't get them. But then there's some cameras that get these pictures, and the debate goes on whether they're Bigfoot or not. Like, we've had one, I forget the name of the famous film, but it looks like the Bigfoot is leaning forward with his face on the ground, sniffing the ground. But we have pictures of a bear doing the same thing, and it looks the same way. So it's a good chance that one, it happens to be a bear instead of a Bigfoot. And then you have these other pictures that
you're talking about like the Jacobs. You're talking about the Jacobs photographs.
I am. Thank you so much. Yes,
I think that is a bear too.
Yeah, but see, we weren't there. We've just given our opinions, but we have a picture that looks like it, and we know how it was recreated because we took several pictures. The camera took several pictures, and we just watched the bear move and then bend down, and then one of those pictures shows it. So that's how we assume that was a bear.
You know what's funny?
I think the Jacob.
Sorry, you know what's funny about, like, people have opinions, right? Like, we weren't there, so we're giving our opinion on that.
Yeah.
Harvey, you could attest to this and we're not paying you to say this. I'm broker than a joke, man. I have no money, but people watching our videos or my stuff will be like, oh, these guys are faking it or they're doing this and that. You were there, Harvey. We weren't faking stuff.
Oh, no way. No way. You guys were super. You guys were like, what's a good analogy? You guys were like, doctors in an operating room. It was, very strict and protocol. And absolutely not. And there was all sorts of, and I've seen some of the, documentary videos some of you guys have done from that particular trip. And there were so many opportunities for people who were there to insert some made up scenario or some completely bogus story and whatnot, and not in the least bit. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then people are going to doubt this saying that on this interview because they're like, oh, he's this or that. But no, it's the truth. People are going to have an opinion, whether they know or don't know.
Right.
Most likely it's they don't know and they're like, oh, they did that and this. So hold on, I have to text my kids to bring me a beer because it's beer o'clock for me where I am right now. So anyway, excuse me while I have a beer brought into me by my children. But it's one of the thing. Another thing is,
that's right.
To me kind of leads into it is this still an active area? Because it has now been, if you will, more exposed, if you will, from its location. There are more people coming out there now because it's been documented, etc. And I've heard some, like Cliff and Bobo, I've talked about that a little bit on some of their podcasts. And from what I recall, the takeaway was it's probably not as active as it used to be, or maybe they've moved out of the area or whatnot. And I just wanted to share maybe two things on that from my experience, right? So, first of all, I've never had a direct encounter or experience at all. However, I have had a lot of experiences with different types of stick structures out there. And I know the concept of stick structures is kind of controversial, even within the small community of Bigfooters itself. But, I've seen some things that I just think are completely unexplainable. I'll share one small example, but I'd like to tell an encounter story that I just came across last week. So I was back, this is 2019, so just a couple of years ago, and I was back there with now family friends of ours. So we were going back in there, a little vehicle convoy, and it was in the summer. Nobody else was there at the time. And we're slowly crawling around this dirt road, 12 and 13. And we come around this one little bend, and we're almost right in the middle of the road. There was this giant, really, for lack of a better word, tree. It was probably as big as my body is in terms of circumference, and maybe 10 or 12 feet tall. And it was all kind of broken off and broken up. And it was jammed right in the middle of the hard pack road itself, right? Looks like somebody was like a spear fisherman sticking a spear, into the ground. And that thing was in there so far you wouldn't budge. And we had to like go around it. And I've noticed, we could argue, was that, wind causing it in a windstorm and whatnot. I don't think so, but some people would say that. But what I will say is that from some of these other podcasts I've listened to and experienced over the years, even Les Stroud, actually, interestingly enough, have reported similar scenarios in supposedly active Bigfoot areas in different parts of the world. Right. So that's one thing. The other thing I'd like to share is, so friends of mine know a lady in the Reading area. She's actually a nurse, and she likes to ride motorcycles, and she has a lot of property out there in kind of the Willow Creek area, just south of Willow Creek, in an area called Titlow Hill. I don't know if you know the area, Robert, but she had a direct encounter about 8 years ago. And I had the chance to talk to her directly last week. And it's interesting because, I always hear other people talking to other people about encounters. And this is the first time I had the chance to speak to someone directly. And what's interesting is, I tell you, it sounds just like almost cookie cutter, like what everybody says from all over the world. It was 8 to 10 feet tall, human face, orangutan-like body, long shaggy hair, completely freaked her out. She's still kind of, struggling, but processing it to this day. So I would just say the reason I bring those two scenarios up is back to the point of, is it still an active area? I kind of tend to think it is, maybe not in the Bluff Creek spot itself, but, in the Six Rivers National Forest. At least that's my hope.
Well, active is, I'll go ahead, Tate, I'll expand this and then I'll let you have it. Active is definitely, there is activity, but the question is what's causing all the activity? That's something we have to think about. Stick structures, things do fall out of trees and they land in a certain way. I've seen that. I've also seen sticks that seem to be piled up in a pattern that doesn't seem to match what you would expect from trees falling or branches falling down. But we don't know if a person did that or if a Bigfoot did that. That's one of the challenges we have with that. And the tree failures are coming down the hillsides and impaling themselves as though somebody took them and speared them into the middle of things. When the soil is wet and momentum and trajectory from the top of the hill, who knows what can happen? So that's something else. If we don't see it, then we can't say something did it, but we speculate based on our experience or looking at the dynamics of it. Because I admit, I've seen some stuff that looks like it's totally like piled up. And I look at that going, that is so freaking obvious. Somebody has piled that up. But something has piled it up. We don't know if somebody has. And that's just where the point is. Now you go over, you start looking for tracks, or you're looking for disturbances, or where they were drugged from, or how did they get here? Are they broken by hand, or were they chewed off? Were they cut with an axe? And those are all those things you look at. And I remember Le Shroud when he did this thing, and it was one of the shows where I forget the guy name from Canada, but it was questioned because the guy's history.
Todd Standing.
Thank you. That's outstanding of you to bring that up. But Todd Standing, where he's experienced a lot of things, and the question is, we weren't there, but the question is, did he make it up, or did he really experience it, or was it what we think it was? But he pointed out a bunch of trees that were piled up, and Le Shroud was intrigued by it. Le Shroud's an outdoorsman. He looks at a lot of different things. So if he's intrigued by it, in his mind, he's running this checkpoint. He's going, how did this get here? What are the signs of it being drug or placed or put, whatever? So, he's going through the whole ritual of that. And I get asked questions all the time, but I'd rather be standing there looking at it and before I give an opinion on it. And that's the difficult thing is we all have opinions. We can give them, but until we're standing there investigating it, it's just an opinion. I guess it'll still be opinion if I tell you what I think. At least I can give kind of a half-assed investigation of it to come up with possibilities. So I hope that's helpful for that. If that is, Harvey?
No, I think Bluff Creek is active, but not in the way it used to be. Because versus what I experienced in 2021, it felt like more direct experiences with something. Because the rock slide, who knows what that was? And then the thing we heard walking in the creek, the possible whoops that we heard, the incident with Ron's dog Bandit acting weird, and then whatever was thrown at me and Alex in Laird Meadow. And I think that differed because of the fires, for sure. There was a ton of fires that year. And there was to the south of, or to the north of us and to the east of us. And then this past summer, it felt like there was just activity, but we missed it. So we were seeing evidence of past activity. So I think the activity is there for sure. I think the way it's changed is different, though. Probably not vocal like they might have used to been back in the day when nobody was in there. But now everybody's in there. They have to change everything up.
Yeah, I've been going to that place for a long time, and I found little baby footprints in a section near Louse Camp that looked like human baby feet to me. And there were several of them, and they were walking in the mud, and they had short stances. They were little bitty footprints. They weren't, I don't think they were bear prints. I think they were little human prints. And it was in a place where Bobo said, this is a secret place, but I'll show it to you. Because this is where I guaranteed to find something in the mud because it oozes out of the side of the hill, and people don't go there. So, and it's where the old road is that used to come out of Louse Camp that Roger Patterson, Bob Gilman tried to escape on until the slide blocked them. That's that old road that I'm talking about. But and also, it's like being in a canyon and minding your own business and walking along, and you hear people talking, women talking and giggling and carrying on a regular conversation, and that as soon as you say something, it stops. And you don't find any tracks or anything, or being in a campsite by yourself. Well, maybe not by yourself, but just you and that person, and you hear mimicking going on of people talking around you, and or you're playing your flute and you hear something playing, repeating what you're trying to do from the bottom of a canyon, at dusk. And there's other places where you have these rocks. As a matter of fact, you're talking about activity is over at Twin Lakes. I was sitting there playing my flute, or trying to, by the shore, and Bobo was there, and Bart was there, and I was playing the flute. But what I usually do is I play it really loud, like a whistle, just to see where I could get back, and then I proceed to play there by the water because I like the way it skips across the water. And I hear a bunch of commotion going on, and I'm like, "What's going on?" But I keep playing. And then after I was finished, I went over and talked to Bobo. And that's when he explained that while I was playing my flute, a rock flew to the air and landed right behind him and then bounced up towards the lake. And the hillside's not that steep, which rules out a rock rolling all the way down the hill. And that's the same location where Bobo and Cliff had some activity a few years prior. So the question is, it's still active? Well, there are some things that you hear and experience that you can't put your finger on. So something is doing that. Something is making the noises. Something is tossing the rocks. Something is making these antagonistic things, and you don't know what it is, but something is doing it. So if you ask about, is there still activity? And there's some activity of something that's doing these things that are very similar to the reports of what Bigfoot does. So it's not like the transitive. If A equals B, then B equals C, then A equals C. So we can speculate, but if you believe in your heart and your soul that that's a Bigfoot activity, then you would say it is still active. It's just not quite
also
what you would expect.
Right. But at some point, and this is how I look at it, right? So I have this, I tell my kids this, I made up this scale of 0 to 10 of believability, right? And where is somebody on a scale of 0 to 10? And I say, well, no one can be a 0 because it's impossible to prove a negative, right? It's just mathematically impossible. So there's no way to say anyone would be a 0. And you really can't say it's a 10,
right?
Or at least most people can, unless it's on the hood of your car, right? Or quote unquote science has a body. So where are you, right? And so I mean, by my own scale, I'm technically probably a 6.5 or so, but because I've never seen one yet. And by the way, if I ever am lucky enough in my life to see one of these things, I may never want to do this again, right? I may be so completely freaked out that, hey, I'm done. I'm good. I don't want to go back in the woods anymore. And some people feel that way. But maybe one more short story. So again, for those who haven't been out there, which I again highly recommend, however, people do take the time, do the research, contact you guys, and find a way to get out there. But so as you know, you're going up right off Highway 96. You start to go up the Go Road or the IC Road, whatever you want to call it, 12N1 or 15N1. And about 7 miles up to the right side, you guys will know there's a thing called the Prospect Trailhead or Prospect Hill Trailhead, and there's a large kind of turnout there. So I've camped there a number of times when it's been impossible to go much further up the road because of debris and from the winter and whatnot. And so another maybe my last story from last summer when I saw you guys. So I left Sunday morning quite early. No one was up yet, and so I kind of slowly crawled out of the camp from the cell site on my own, and I made my way down the road to get back to 96. And I decided to pull off in this Prospect Hill Trail area to get kind of cleaned up and make myself some coffee and final packing and so on. Excuse me. Then I was going to head back to the Bay Area. And so I'm there, it's maybe 6 a.m. in the morning at this point. It was daylight, and I'm standing there getting myself cleaned up, so you can imagine what that means. And all of a sudden in this, it's ringed by kind of a dense tree structure, right? And so I heard this giant crack, like it wasn't a twig break. It was like a tree, like someone broke a tree over their knee. Okay, I don't know how else to describe it. That's exactly what came to my mind. And I had a very similar experience later that year when I was there with a friend of mine, right back in that same spot again. So again, super circumstantial, but oddly enough, this is the other thing I've noticed with myself. There's this thing that happens, at least with me cognitively, when I'm out there sometimes, where it's like, okay, I'm here to have an experience, right? As much as I can. There I am. I kind of had a potential beginning of an experience, and what did I do? I didn't go charging in there. I didn't try to stay there and elicit a deeper encounter. I got in the car and I took off out of there. And it took me like about an hour before I kind of almost came to my senses. I don't know how else to say it. I'm like, geez, why did I do that? Right? Why did I just stay there and kind of push a little bit more deeply? And maybe because I don't have the courage yet built up to do these things more on my own. That could be it. But there's a weird cognitive thing that kind of happens. And I don't know. Maybe that's my last story for the night.
I agree. Well, I think you're like, why did I do that? You go through this scenario like, what if I just did this instead? And then I've said this before. I'm still nervous in the dark. Sometimes you get over it. Sometimes it takes a long time. But I don't know. The best way to get over it is kind of keep going out there. And so hearing that alone, especially with something breaking like a twig or like a branch over a knee, would be pretty freaky. That would not be fun to hear at all.
No. Well, you have to trust your instincts. I mean, God gave it to us, or if you don't believe that, you inherited these things. If you don't feel comfortable in a place, then you probably should not be there. If you don't feel fear and you don't feel like you need to run away, then you don't. And I think the worst thing to do is in the middle of the night when you get scared is throw all your shit in the car and try to drive away at a high rate of speed to go for safety. Sometimes it's better to ride it out till where it's safe to leave. And it all depends. I mean, I've been on a few expeditions, if you want to call them that, where we've had things. We've had trees fail. We've had samurai talk. And the first thing in my mind wasn't to run away. It was to hang around to see what happens next.
Yeah,
and
that's how we all die.
And I'm not dead yet. So, and the other thing is, sometimes when you hang around and you don't run away, so to speak, the show's over. Sometimes, I say most of the time, it stops. You don't have that anymore. You hear the occasional stick break or something still there, but the whole push to try to get you to move out is gone. But if you get this experience and you leave, then you just it's successful. If the activity is done to chase you away, it is successful, and it will happen again to other people. Yeah. But if it isn't successful, it doesn't work. Just like knocking on a tree. If you knock on a tree and you get a response, it works, right? But you knock on a tree and nothing happens, then it's not working. So I guess that's my 2 bits for that. and it's okay to change locations because you feel uncomfortable. I just caution that you don't do it immediately and run away and crash your car or get lost.
That's right. Yeah, of course.
Or
right. Well,
leave your phone or camera on top of your car.
Yeah. Whatever it was big. So it was either a big deer or a big bear, falling on a big log. I mean, there was really no other, or it was a Bigfoot doing it. Okay. There was no other or a person potentially, which I'm just going to rule that out. There's nobody back in there. Okay. So, it's just the way it is. But, whatever it was, if its goal was to kind of freak me out and get me to eventually leave, that it was successful. So
I got one last question for the evening for you, Harvey. Like me, do you think when you're out there and like in the wilderness, like that's what real life is? And then when you go back to your job at home, you're like, this isn't real. Like this is like an artificial real life. Like life nothing here matters. But when you're out there, it's like you could die. You're not going to die going into the office. Oh, yeah. I mean, do you kind of get that feeling when you're out there? You're like, man, I was just out in the real world and I'm just back in La La Land.
I mean, I guess to a degree, sure, yes, and that's one of the reasons I do this, right? So, which is because there's a huge adventure to this, right? It's almost like, we're back in the 1800s and we're going on some expedition in a quasi uncharted part of the world that was not well known to Western culture at the time, or fill in whatever romantic concept you want, but it really is a legitimate part of why I do this. It's interesting. It's a little dangerous. It takes guts to do stuff like this, but it's also very fulfilling. And every time I've done this, I've been able to push myself and my experiences there just a little bit further, right? So first time, right, didn't even make it back off Highway 96. I got punked. There was a fire. I was in a sports car, just wrong across the board, right? And, leading up to last summer where I met you guys, and I'm now, taking people down there myself, and I'm starting to have tiny little circumstantial experiences, right? So, it's building for me. I hope I can continue to do this. What I want to do next, though, is not just continue to explore that area. I really want to do 2 things. One is I want to explore the broader area of 6 Rivers in general, or just that entire spot, whether it's 6 Rivers or not, Mendocino National Forest, etc. And then secondarily, I want to start looking at areas outside of that, right? I heard there's a lot of activity by Yosemite. Of course, there's activity documented in Olympia, and state of Washington, et cetera, et cetera. So the biggest challenge for me is I work full time, and so there's a time challenge for me to get out. I kind of know this area, and while it's a long drive for me, it's kind of easy for me. I know what to bring. I know where I'm going for the most part. I know what the dangers are, so I can plan for it. But that's really what's next for me, is keep pushing, bring on the next chapter of adventure, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, for sure. That's a good planning. You know what to bring and everything.
Yeah, there is an important comfort about going to a place that's familiar. You feel safer, and you know what to expect. A lot of the researchers don't go all over the United States to go look for something. It's because every time you go to a new area, you have to figure out how the area works. So most of the researchers have an area they focus on, and they know the area very well, and they know what's unusual in that area, and they have places they do explore within that area, and they cover it pretty well. So if you're making a show, you go all over the place, follow everybody else's reports. But if you have an area you could focus on and do your own research there, it'll be safer, more familiar, easier to access it, probably most likely, and it's a good place to go to. And that's why we kind of run into the same thing where, I mean, I go to Bluff Creek more than anywhere else. And people say, aren't you tired of it? There's guys that a member of the Bluff Creek Project who go, I'm tired of going to the film site. Let's go do something different. Let's go see another area. And I don't blame them. It's they get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. And it's good to expand and go different places. But if you're serious about researching an aspect of an area, you hang around there and you see what's different. And so that's just my 2 bits for that. And with that cost of gas,
that's why I go to the same spots every time I'm out there. Keep going.
Yeah, I think it's important because like Tate does a couple times a year now. He has these big trips he takes, and he saves up for this. And plus, he has no girlfriend to spend all his money, so he saves up for this. And then you go to these places and you do your projects, and then you finish out and you go back and you produce your stuff and you share what you have on your projects with people, and you inspire people. So I don't know whether Tate's doing all this to inspire people, or he's just trying to fill up his adventure ticket. We'll have to ask him those questions later.
I don't care what people think if I'm trying to inspire them. They can be inspired if they want. No, I'm just kidding. No, but whatever.
Well, Tate has 2 customers. He has the internal customer, which is himself, and then he has the external customer, which are people, his friends he knows that he goes out and he does all the squatching with and sharing experiences, which is typical. Yeah. And I know Harvey has his internal customer. He got himself. He went out a lot of times by himself, experiencing things, but it's not the same when you're by yourself, saying, "Oh my God, look at that! Isn't that awesome? That bear just ran down and attacked that deer and ate it. That was awesome." But who do you say that to? Yourself, me, myself, and I. But when you're with somebody you trust and you're out there and you experience these things, it's almost like they're twice as great. Having somebody to say, "Did you see that?"
Yep. Sometimes I think it's cooler when you see it alone because it makes you a cooler person, in my opinion. Like, I am blessed that I got to see that. And maybe you refer, I don't know, I don't believe in that kind of like weird, like if I was with another person kind of thing, I wouldn't have saw it because maybe I was spiritually blessed by this presence of being alone. I don't know. Who knows? But like, it's just cooler to see an animal alone. It's like, yeah, that just makes me cooler because I saw it and you didn't.
Well, I admit there's some greatness to that. My years of a park rangering where I got to see, I even follow the bears down the trail. They'd stop, I'd stop. They look over their shoulder. They don't see me. They keep walking. I'm kind of downwind from them. That's an experience. But now I tell you stories about it. You're like, yeah, sure, Robert. But it's different.
Sure, Robert. I don't believe that.
Yeah, it's different. Experiencing by yourselves are different than experience with a friend, but it's always nice to have somebody which share the same experience. Let's take that same concept and apply it to a Bigfoot encounter, where if you have somebody there that sees the same thing, you could bounce ideas off each other without finishing each other's sentences. Let the other one explain what they saw, what they heard, and you find out that your experience is almost identical to the other person, which means it'll never be identical because you always see different things. It's almost the same as you've seen, and you know that what you saw is what it is. And that's a nice thing about having a second party is they reassure what it is you experienced. That's happened to me on numerous times. And it's great to say, did you see that? Like, yeah. See what? What did you see? You tell me what you saw. And then they tell you and you go, oh my God, that's exactly within reason what I saw and experienced. And when that happens, you're like, holy crap. There's something to this. I'm not like, it's not all in my head, imagining it or wishing it to be so. I have a second opinion. So we're both crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true though. But so as we close out, Harvey, before we end this, is there anything you would tell anybody interested in the subject or who's an enthusiast like yourself? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I say, get off your butt and give it a try, right? Because you're never going to have an experience, whether it is wildlife experience or just, the ability to explore all this, amazing natural resources that are really all around us. If you're sitting on your couch, right? Or if you're in the office, or if you're at the doing something that you typically do every day. So it's crazy how much is out there and how close it is to you. And it's easy. Like you I think asked the question earlier, Tate, about, is this real or is it not real, or what is real? It's just so much of it, and it's just right there, right? So, like, for example, about an hour north of me, when I start driving out of the Bay Area, it's like all of a sudden an entirely different ecosystem. And the mountains and the trees just begin, and they don't really end until you kind of hit Alaska, with maybe a couple of breaks in between for Portland, Seattle, and so on and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy that, in fact, I heard the statistic the other day that if you look at, someone did a study of the amount of undeveloped areas in, I think, England, maybe included Wales and Scotland, and it was like this mind-boggling 95% or over 90% of it was undeveloped, and that included the counting of roads and sidewalks and all this other stuff, right? And it's just amazing. And so it's there. There is so much history that has been forgotten, I'd say, and that really has kind of touched the world. And for me, it's 9 hours from my doorstep. So, geez, why wouldn't I drive out there and go check it out? So, give it a shot, give it a try, give it a shot.
Awesome, I like that. That's good advice for sure. Getting off your butt and getting out there is the best advice I think anybody can have. But
stop living vicariously through everybody else. Time to make those your personal experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
And buy Robert's book and donate to the Bluff Creek Project. So I forgot to say those two things.
And if anybody wants my Cash App, I'm always welcome for free handouts too.
Of course you are, Tate.
As always. But thank you again, Harvey, for coming on and taking the time to do this. Thank you, Robert, for co-hosting this one. It's always fun.
Oh, I thought you were co-hosting and I was hosting. My mistake.
Oh, wait. Whatever it is.
I'm just teasing you. Yeah, this is your show. I'm here to assist.
Well, no, you're good. You're part of it as much as I am. But again, we thank you, Harvey, and we hope you all have a good night, and we'll catch you back next time.
Thanks, guys.